Hey everybody, this one looks like it could be a good case for a video. We've got Mark's iPhone 8 here, and he says, hey, my iPhone 8 went scuba diving with me, and it sure looks like it did. He says he went scuba diving in salt water. Now, I've been scuba diving, and I got the junior certification where you can go to 40 feet deep. Mark here is the fancy scuba diver because he said that his dive computer showed that he was 80 feet deep. That is massive amount of pressure underwater, just forcing the salt water straight into the phone, and this looks absolutely destroyed. So let's jump in. We've got the board taken out, and let's go ahead and put it under the microscope and just see how bad does it get. Salt water plus 80 feet deep. It is looking pretty gross here under the microscope. Let's just kind of take a tour of the board. We can see salt crystals everywhere. You could salt up an extra large order of fries with this. Oh man, look at that. You just know there's no underfill in this area. I mean, I can see like colors. I mean, that looks like maybe there's some plankton glued on there. I have no idea. That's pretty rough. And water is going to be underneath every single one of these chips. In fact, this might be the only iPhone 8 where I'm like a little bit sad that it's not the underfilled Tigris. This one's not underfilled, which means you know salt water went under there. The good news about salt water, sometimes when it's so bad like this, oh man, look at this area where Chestnut is. That is just some kind of lunar landscape. I mean, I don't even know how to describe that. It looks like somebody just threw up on this board and then it dried there. But here's the thing with salt water. Sometimes saltwater damage is actually like your favorite thing to repair because it always looks super horrible. But sometimes that salt just immediately shorts out the battery. And the number one thing that you can do when your phone gets wet is to get the electricity off the board. So if the battery just instantly sizzles, then while the board can be kind of, you know, finger painted with the salt demon here, you can clean all that off. And a lot of times electrically, the chips themselves have not actually been killed because power was withdrawn so fast. So I think on this one, this is so bad that we're gonna actually go for the ultrasonic cleaning first. We'll just sort of take note. Worst area down here at the bottom of the phone, backlight, driver, Chestnut, image, and pretty much head to toe. Now on an iPhone 8, I generally don't take off this soldered on shield right here. And the reason is because my buddy under here, this little coil array chip, he really doesn't like to get hot. So I don't want to take this off with heat. Plus there's not a lot under there. So even though it's all covered with salt, it's mostly some RF chips that don't have ball grid array feet. They are QFN flat on the board, so water really can't go under them. However, up here at the top, I am going to take off this CPU shield because it can trap water underneath there, and there's probably going to be a lot of water damage down here in this area. So that's our next step. Let's pop off this CPU shield, and then I'm going to drop it in ultrasonic with that 3% Branson EC, take it back out, toothbrush and alcohol, and then we'll be right back here. Let's go ahead and pop off this shield. All right, my method for taking off the shield is going to be the Dakota Black method. So you guys might remember Dakota's tattoo. So on these older phones like the iPhone 8, we're going to go for high heat, max air in a big nozzle. Now on the 8, there's a little bit of a lip here of some glue that we're going to take off, and we're going to go by time rather than just allowing the shield to just release. We're going to let it get hot, and then when we think enough time has gone by, stop with the heat and try to pop off that shield. And here's what it looks like. There we go, nice and easy. Let's go ahead and take a quick glance under the microscope, and then we're going to pop this in ultrasonic. Just a little bit more water. It actually looks pretty good under there. So that's one small plus on this phone. Time for ultrasonic, and I'll be right back after we scrub it with toothbrush and alcohol. All right, here we go. It's gotten out of the bathtub, and let's take a look. We see a lot less corrosion. All of that green goo, look down here in the worst part of this phone by Chestnut. There's a little bit of oxidation, but all of that just dried salt from the Atlantic Ocean is pretty much gone. And here's some bad damage. This looks like a potentially bad capacitor there. Who knows? And then up here, it doesn't look too bad. Power management chip looks completely intact because it has that protective layer of underfill, so water really can't get under there. This phone really looks like it's in pretty good shape, except for down here. So because at the beginning this was so water damaged, and just kind of from experience, this little guy here, Chestnut, is a boost IC, which means it takes that main power rail and it boosts it up to a high voltage. And because of that, it tends to be a place where water damage sort of collects. Let's go ahead and prophylactically change Chestnut, because there's some CPU data signaling lines that also go under Chestnut, and I'd hate to put electricity into this phone only to find that corrosion under Chestnut electrocutes the CPU. So I'm going to change Chestnut before we do anything else. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm glad I did. Look at what it looks like under Chestnut. That looks absolutely disgusting. Who knows what kind of mud from the deep sea is under this Chestnut, but man, that you can definitely see that you had balls that were corroded together. And this is why I like to do this job before I troubleshoot and start putting electricity in a phone that looks like this, because I don't want to electrocute the CPU through Chestnut. So now let's go ahead and get those pads cleaned up. We're going to get rid of this Chestnut and replace it with a beautiful, fresh, brand new Chestnut. Just perfect for a December repair. Chestnut roasting on a saltwater board. All right, let's remember, where does the orientation mark line up? And on this one, I remember that the dot on Chestnut points towards Chestnut's coil. Right there. There he goes. Good job, little buddy. Let's see, is there anything else that I want to do prophylactically before we put electricity into the board? Let's look around. I am going to prophylactically delete this guy, because I don't need him for data recovery, and there is no universe Sorry, Mark, where this is going to actually be a phone again. There was so much corrosion around here, but it just looks pretty cleaned up. I don't actually see any oxidation, so I'm going to leave these guys alone. I'm going to put a multimeter on this guy and just make sure that he's not actually causing a short. He's not short. Looks a little beat up. Had a rough night, but he's all right. Let me look at these connector feet. There's a lot of oxidation inside my LCD connector, but I think that's just discoloration. When I look at the actual feet, it looks like they're all connected. So I'm going to say good enough for data recovery. Good enough for data recovery over here. I'll look under this guy. All right, I'm happy with it. I think this board actually has a really good chance of having nothing else wrong with it. So let's go ahead and fire up the DC power supply and say, can it boot? All right, there we go. It's connected. And hey, look at that right there. I see 0 current consumption. That's good. That tells me that my main power rail, my VDD boost rail, my battery VCC, all of those are fine. So now we're going to go ahead and ask that beautiful looking power management chip, can you boot up the phone? And we're going to ask that perfectly underfilled CPU, can you communicate? Prompting to boot. And let's look at that boot current. Let's see, can it get above about 200 milliamps? And it looks like yes, that's a good sign. That means this phone should be able to make an Apple logo, and it looks like it is booting up. Maybe that current is a little bit high as the RF system comes online, which doesn't surprise me. The RF system is down here, and we took off one capacitor, but there were some ugly looking other ones. Let's go ahead, throw a screen on it and say, can this phone actually make image, accept touch, so that we can get those pictures off for Mark? All right, we're going to prompt it to boot down here at the charge port and cross your fingers. Let's see what happens. So far, nothing. But wait. I don't see anything on the screen. I don't see anything on the screen, but it might be that backlight is not working because backlight was also in that area down at the bottom of the phone. We don't really need backlight for data recovery, but I do need to be able to see if this phone is making image. So let me go ahead and take apart this screen so we can be our own backlight and shine from the microscope light from behind. All right, officially no image. So that means we have a problem to solve. We're going to have to go ahead and make sure that this phone still looks like it's booting on DC power. So let's go back a step, take off the battery and get out DC power. Now let's prompt it up to boot. Take a look for image using the microscope light. Hey, I do see image. Do you see it? Look at that. Let me try to pull this down. Look at that. I can see the lock screen. Do you guys see that? That means this phone has indeed booted up. Maybe it can't charge and it can't actually boot off this battery. Probably this battery is dead. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe the battery doesn't produce enough of that extra current that this device is consuming because it's got a lot of corrosion in it. But it looks like we do indeed have a path to data. Let's check to see if Mark's passcode is correct. All right, do we have touch? Let's find out. No, we don't have touch. Boo, hiss, boo, hiss. All right, so that means that we are going to have another problem to solve. Why do we have image but not touch? I bet you it's going to have to do down at the bottom of the phone. That's where a lot of the touch circuitry is. So let's dive in and see if we can find a problem. All right, I'm going to get it a little bit cleaner on this top side so that we can really see what's going on. Now we're going to look here at some classic spots. This row of filters that are all around chestnut, and I bet you that one of these is probably open. So I'm going to cut this bracket so that we can see, get a little clearance. So we've got 3 components right here and another one here that look like they're in really bad shape. So I'd like to diode mode the connector, but first let's just see if what we can see with our eyes, does this lead to a problem with no touch? So I'm going to turn the board to match what ZXW shows in this area. So there we go. We can see on ZXW, see the chestnut chip, and you can see chestnut squeal. Now we're going to zoom in and we're going to look for these guys here. 1, 2, 3 that look particularly like they might be an open circuit without having to actually go diode mode the connector, which is how we would find this problem if we didn't have any physical damage. All right, so we see 1, 2, 3 components that really are need to be there in order to have flow through that line. And if they're not there because their pads are corroded, then we're going to have an open. So let's see. R5733 is going to be a backlight resistor, which is acting like a filter. R5734 is another backlight return line. And then right here, FL5725, that's the one that we really need. FL5725 is our PP5V1 touch. Look at that, touch power has to go through this guy, and if he's not there, it's obviously going to be open. So if we were to diode mode in the connector, it would probably lead us right here. There's a chance that our backlight problem is due to these really awful looking resistors, and it's not actually corrosion under this chip. So since we're in this area anyway, let's go ahead and replace all 3 just to see if we could also bring back backlight just for fun. Okay, let's do the unthinkable here. All right, never do this. Do not ever replace a filter with a wire. Don't ever do that. And here's why. Because if you do that to fix something, then you've left the circuit unprotected. And if there were a short circuit on the other side of that filter and the filter's now a wire, that's like shoving a quarter in a circuit breaker. But for Mark, we're going to go ahead and do it anyway, just for data recovery, because this phone is such toast that there's no way that we're going to try to fix everything about this relatively old phone to make it a phone again. So for data recovery, because I'm using my known good screen that I've used before and I know it doesn't have any shorts in it on these lines, and because I know that I'm going to have the battery disconnected, I'm going to go ahead and do the unthinkable. Don't tell anybody. I'm going to put a wire here just for the sake of time. Well, if I see any students out there putting wires where filters go for repair, then I'm going to come to your house and I'm going to shred your certificate. Shredder. Can't have that. All right, I'm going to get my jumper wire from a little piece of braid. Now to actually replace these guys, it would require a little bit more work to rejuvenate these pads to accept a component. And we would just be doing that for aesthetics anyway, since this is data recovery. Jumper 1 is done. Jumper number 2. All right, let's see if it works. Moment of truth. All right, let's prompt it to boot. Cross your fingers. Hey, there's that Apple logo. It looks like we brought back backlight. But will it have touch? Look at this. This is such corrosion. All right, cross your fingers. Does it have touch? Yes. All right, there we go. We have a path to data. Look at that. We're going to be able to type in Mark's passcode, connect it to a computer, and offload all of those Atlantic Ocean diving pictures. So there we go. Look back at this one. This one is just so corroded. It really needs the light from the microscope. Look at how bad this was. Look at this corrosion inside. So much water, so much rust was just forced inside Mark's iPhone 8. 80 feet deep in the Atlantic Ocean. Just look at that. And isn't it just insane how sometimes the worst looking damage ends up being, you know, kind of a relatively straightforward fault. So here we go. Mark, you're getting your 80 feet deep iPhone 8 recovered for $300, standard data, because this is just a standard data recovery job. Nothing special, right? There we go. Look at that. It's insane. Look at that. That is just insane. All right, it's going to be great news for Mark. And if you have a special job, I'd love to do a video on it. Hit us up on our website, get a quote, and mail it in. We're always going to ask if you want to be, you know, if your job is interesting or cool. You know, do you want to be on YouTube? Say yes or no. If you say no, it's fine. We'll never make a video if you say no. But if you say yes, then if you got an interesting cape, send it my way.